Welcome to Mental Health Bites with Dr. Judy. In this podcast, I discuss a timely topic related to psychology, answer one of your burning questions, and leave you with a practical tip to improve your mental wellness every single day. Let's jump right in to the timely topic of the day. Today, we're diving into a very important topic: anxious attachment. Maybe you felt the pang of fear when someone doesn't text you back right away, or perhaps you've avoided voicing your needs at work, worrying that it might upset your boss. These can be telltale signs of anxious attachment. And let me tell you, you're not alone. In fact, this attachment style has been linked to chronic people pleasing, shaky self esteem, and even professional struggles. And it doesn't just affect us, it's a hot topic in the lives of celebrities too. More on that in a minute. Stay with me to learn where anxious attachment comes from, how it impacts your relationships and career, and most importantly, what you can do to heal. As some of you know, I wrote a book called The New Rules of Attachment. So I delved deeply into this topic because I saw how much anxious attachment was affecting people in all walks of life. Anxious attachment starts in childhood, often in relationships where care or affection was inconsistent. So as a child, some of those most important relationships are with your primary caregivers. A primary caregiver is anyone who is responsible for meeting your needs on a daily basis, especially when you're young and when you can't fend for yourself. As a child, you might have felt unsure if your caregiver would be there when you needed them or how they might respond when you communicated a need. Fast forward to adulthood, and this uncertainty becomes a blueprint for your relationships and even your career. Here's a great example. Actress Kristen Bell has openly discussed how therapy helped her overcome patterns of anxious attachment in her marriage. She shared that she used to struggle with needing constant reassurance and approval, which made her feel emotionally vulnerable. In fact, Kristen Bell is an advocate for getting mental health support when you need it. And it's been wonderful to see her become a champion in that, especially because she happens to be one of my favorite actresses. And fun fact, I actually acted with her in her previous TV show, Veronica Mars, on an episode in 2005, which was called Normal is a Watchword. So if you can find that episode, you'll see me and Kristen acting opposite of one another in a scene where I actually play a high school volleyball player. So fun. And she was a lovely person to work with and super humble and really hardworking, at least from what I could see in the few minutes of interaction I had with her back in the day. I want to get back to some of these important statistics about anxious attachment. On the career side, research from Frontiers in Psychology reveals that anxious attachment can lead to lower workplace satisfaction and productivity, often because of a fear of rejection or failure. So oftentimes, anxiously attached individuals just won't take the leap. They won't actually take on a leadership position or go after that next promotion in the same way as others would. And think about it. If you're constantly second guessing your performance or seeking validation, that emotional toll can really block your professional growth and your belief in yourself. Here's the core of it. Anxious attachment leads to chronic people pleasing. Why? Because your self esteem relies on external approval. This can keep you stuck in a cycle of seeking validation and feeling unfulfilled when you don't get it. I recently gave a TED Talk at TEDx Reno, and during that TED Talk, I talked about the prototypical self-talk of people with anxious attachment. Because people with anxious attachment tend to crave closeness and reassurance in relationships, but they also worry excessively about abandonment and rejection, this leads to clingy or overly dependent behaviors. Oftentimes, the operating system of these worried warriors, as I call them, typically contains one or more of these self-statements. I'm not as worthy as others. I need to rescue everyone. I fear being on my own, and I have to analyze everything. But rest assured, even if this sounds like your prototypical self talk, in the rest of this podcast, I'm going to talk about some practical ways to heal and also answer one of your questions regarding anxious attachment. And that's what we'll tackle next. So let's go to a listener question now. And this one comes from Marge in Seattle. And she says, Dr. Judy, I've noticed that my anxious attachment style makes me overthink everything at work. I'm constantly doubting myself and trying to please my boss, and it is exhausting. How can I stop this from affecting my productivity and self-confidence? So, Marge, thank you for this fantastic question. What you're experiencing is incredibly common. Here's why this happens. Anxious attachment activates your stress response, making you hyper focused on checking out what others are thinking and saying about you and whether they like you. And that, of course, increases your cognitive load and makes you tired over time. In the workplace, what does this look like? Well, this means that you're more likely to overcommit, hesitate to speak up, and even burn out from all the people pleasing. So, the first step, and this is a key step, is awareness of this pattern. Notice when you're acting from a place of fear rather than confidence and a belief in yourself. Try reframing your thoughts. Instead of thinking, I have to make my boss happy, think instead, how can I add value while staying true to myself? This shifts the focus back to your strengths and contributions for their sake and not just to make somebody else happy. And also consider practicing assertiveness skills. Start small by voicing your opinion in low stakes situations, and over time, you'll build the confidence to communicate your needs more effectively. Before we get to the practical tip of the day, I want to make a finer point on developing assertive communication, which is an important skill for everyone to have, but especially for people who struggle with anxious attachment. Assertive communication is all about expressing your thoughts, feelings, and needs clearly and respectfully while considering others' perspectives at the same time. So, here are some helpful tips. First, use I statements. Start sentences with I to take ownership of your thoughts and feelings rather than blaming others. So instead of saying, you never listen to me, say, I feel unheard when I'm interrupted during meetings. This works because it minimizes defensiveness and fosters productive conversations. Second tip, be clear and specific. Clearly state what you want or need without being vague or overly emotional. Instead of saying, I need more help around the house, say, can you take responsibility for doing the dishes on weekdays? And this works because specificity reduces misunderstandings and also helps the other person to respond directly to you as well. Third tip, practice active listening. Now, you guys have heard me talk about active listening before. It's such an important skill. And it's important to use it in your own assertive communication because it shows that you're genuinely listening by maintaining eye contact, by showing them that you're engaged, nodding and paraphrasing what the other person says. And that also reduces miscommunication too. So, an example of this might be, it sounds like you're frustrated because you feel overworked. Is that right? And this works because it builds mutual respect and ensures a collaborative and productive conversation. Fourth tip, set boundaries. So this is all about politely but firmly saying no to requests that violates your limits or your values. So you can say, I'd love to help, but I'm not available this weekend. Can we look at another time? This is super important for people who are chronic people pleasers, like many anxiously attached individuals are, because these boundaries are essential to protect your own well being while maintaining respect for others. Next tip, avoid over apologizing. Oftentimes, people who have anxious attachment do over apologize. So you should only apologize when appropriate rather than using it as a default response. So instead of saying, sorry to bother you, but could I ask for your help? Say, could you assist me with this task when you have a moment? I really appreciate it. And the reason why this is important to work on is because over apologizing diminishes confidence and your own credibility. And final tip, use the broken record technique. Politely but persistently repeat your request without escalating emotion. So, for example, I appreciate your input, but I'd prefer to stick with my decision on this matter right now. And that consistency helps others to take your stance seriously. I hope these assertive communication tips have helped you. And now let's move on to the practical tip of the day. So today's practical tip is called the daily anchor. This is one of my favorite exercises for everybody, but especially for people who might struggle with anxious attachment. This exercise helps you to find self-assurance and shift your focus from external validation to inner strength. So let's break this down into 3 actionable steps. First step, set a morning intention. At the start of your day, take 5 minutes to reflect on what you want to achieve, but frame it around your values and your needs, not anyone else's approval. Write this intention on a journal or on a sticky note. So instead of saying, I'll make my manager happy by working extra hours, say, I will contribute meaningfully in today's team meeting and honor my boundaries by stopping work at 6 p.m. This primes your mind to focus on self directed goals, reducing the need for external reassurance. Second step, pause for reflection midday. So, midway through your day, and you can set an alarm for this, like at 12 noon, take a 2 to 3 minute break. And during this time, ask yourself, am I acting in alignment with my values so far today? Am I seeking validation or am I honoring my self worth? If you notice you're slipping into people pleasing mode already, reset your mindset for the rest of the day. Take a few deep breaths, remind yourself of your morning intention, refocus, and adjust your actions accordingly. So, for example, if you catch yourself over apologizing for a minor mistake, stop and think, did this mistake really harm anyone? Or am I just afraid of being judged? And third step, celebrate small wins in the evening. At the end of your day, take 5 minutes to reflect on one thing you did well that made you proud. Write this down in your journal and be specific about what it is that you did as well as how you felt. So, an example, today I spoke up in the team meeting and shared my idea. Even though it made me nervous, I'm proud I contributed. This works because it helps you to build self validation and reinforces the belief that your worth isn't dependent on others' approval. Over time, taking these 3 practical steps every day in your daily anchor is going to help you to heal and shift your anxious attachment into a more secure attachment style. Remember, anxious attachment can feel overwhelming, but healing is possible with small intentional steps like these. By practicing these tools, practicing assertive communication skills, and building your self awareness, you'll build confidence, improve your relationships, and take meaningful strides in your career. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of Mental Health Bites. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, there's plenty more where that came from. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you never miss an update. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and leave a comment below with your thoughts or any questions you have. Also, feel free to share this video with your friends and family who might find it useful. Stay tuned for more helpful content, and as always, thank you for your support.